All right, so we're recording. This is episode 10, I believe. And I was talking to Brock a little bit while we were doing this, and I've been trying to space it out the best I can with guys that made big impacts on the program. I was a bit of a knucklehead in the beginning and did Stryber and walk like one after another. But now, I wanted to start this week off strong with Brock, who was one of our best guys we ever had. Brock was a 3-time all-section wrestler. Qualifier as a freshman at a man's weight. I think it was 182 or 170. I'm not sure off the top of my head. 3-time all-section. We'll get into a sophomore section run as we go because there's something to do with that there that I want to talk about. Junior year, he was a section finalist. Senior year, he was a section finalist. So 2 very good guys. I think 3rd and 1st in the state, those 2 guys were those 2 years. Senior year, got wild card to the States. 5th in New York State, made the semifinals. Went on to wrestle at Binghamton, stayed up there, doing his own thing, got a nice business going, and we'll talk about that as well. But I want to start off, Brock, with the first and most simple question is, how did you even get into wrestling in the first place?
That's funny. Well, I was in 2nd grade, and my dad was a wrestler, so I was bad at pretty much every other sport, and he brought me for a tryout. It was actually Coach Kaleo at the time who was running them over at Seven Bridges in 2nd grade. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. I still remember the first moment when my dad was tying my shoes and he was like, all right, just go out there and, go have fun. And we did like the whatever that Coach Clay used to do, takedown A, takedown B, do double leg, single leg the whole time. And then we would play, sharks and minnows at the end or whatever. And that was fun. It was a blast. I fell in love with it. And then I met Coach DeBellis in school, and he dragged me out onto the mat. Well, he didn't even have to. I was there already. And I just loved it. Loved it from the start.
Just to point out in that too is it's interesting to me is that he literally remembers the first practice, right? He remembers how the setup was. And to me, that shows how much Brock loved wrestling, because if it wasn't a good memory, right? If wrestling wasn't such a good memory in that sense, he wouldn't have such a detailed memory. Coach, do you remember when you first met Brock on like the youth circuit level?
Yeah, well, those guys had a great youth program. I mean, a great amount of athletes. There was like 35 kids in Brock's class. It was like Nikki Phillips was there, Bronson was there. I think Nathan and Jacob came soon after. I mean, that was a great the Newcastle Rec was a great program at the time. We're still doing pretty well now, but I mean, that was once I saw Brock and I saw Billy Marino and Brent Lobian wasn't in there yet, but Billy did the youth.
Yeah.
I knew we were going to be tough with the heavyweights for 10 years. That was our saving grace.
And we were. Once Brock got to high school, I think Brock was 70. Were you 170, Brock?
Yeah, 170 first year.
Yeah, so we were 70, 82, 95, 220. Heavyweight were solid from the point that he kind of came on there. Guys like Scotty, like you said, Billy, Brent, and all of them.
Great team.
Brock, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember one of my first experiences with you as a youth guy, even though you were middle school, but it was still you were at youth practice. And at the end of practice, we used to do winner stays in, king of the mat type of thing or whatever. And Brock was just killing everybody. Right? Brock was already ahead of it wasn't a thing. So at the end, I'm a 23-year-old college guy. As Brock went on, and we'll talk about, we had to scrap. I had to really wrestle with this guy. But I'm an adult and he's a 8th grader, right? So we're rolling around, and I remember we wrestled, we sparred a little bit, and he got the takedown. And the whole place was so stoked about it and excited. And it was just a fun memory of, kid version Brock, because we have a lot of memories of pretty much man version Brock. So do you remember that day, Brock, a little bit?
No, but I do remember. I remember meeting you, and I remember the king of the mat type stuff. And I really thought I had you, especially because you were basically my size when I was in 8th grade.
and I'm still that size. So, but
it's okay. You'll grow someday.
Well, I could be like Bing Bing and say, puberty is a hell of a thing. So, hopefully that'll happen for me too. But so I'm gonna jump around a little. Like I said, I'm gonna try to keep in order. But so freshman year we meet Brock. Well, I really meet Brock. I knew him as a youth wrestler, but I really meet him. And at the time, Scotty was the guy in the room, and he was around Brock's size. A little bigger.
Junior?
Scotty was a junior when Brock was a freshman, yeah. So, that was the year Scotty ended up making a section final. He was pretty much our foundation at that point. But like you said, we were good in the heavyweights, and I think Scotty had a lot to do with Brock, stepping up that year. But really what had to do with Brock being that person was his work ethic, right? Even as a freshman, he was tough. He was really, really tough. And a memory that stands out to me from that year, you know, and I have memories from each year that were pretty impactful, I feel like, but that freshman year, I love the Oswego tournament. You know, we go up there.
Yes.
This was the only year we didn't go up there. You know, I had the baby. Yeah, I had the baby, all that stuff. So stuff came in the way that made it a little difficult to get up there this year, but we will go back next year. And it's a great tournament. Izzy even mentioned it as the tournament that kind of turned her career into like, I'm going to take this seriously, right? And Brock lost on the first day. It was just experience, really, that he lost on. And he ran through like 5 or 6 guys on the back bracket in tough fashion and took 9th. And I remember saying, like, this kid, well, we got a good kid here. This kid's going to be tough. Do you remember that tournament, Brock, and the, you know, any stories of it or whatever?
Well, I think that's where my dad burst the "you're not tired" phrase, because match after match.
I still got that shirt.
Yeah. I mean, that's like one of my favorite memories is that tournament. And that was also when Farhan busted his shoulder, and I was trying to break through to start. And Farhan actually did better than me at that tournament. I think he took 7th or so. But I remember I wasn't going to give up, and I was like, I'm taking 9th. I'm going to take 9th. Couture was like, you know who the toughest guy in the tournament is? The guy who takes 3rd. Or the guy who – and I was like, I was for it. I knew I was going to wrestle through that next day. And at the end of that tournament, DeBellis let me start because I guess you guys just saw it. And that was probably, I mean, one of my better tournaments every year. I mean, I won it, I think, the year after that at 82. Senior year when I tossed EJ Sampo and busted his head, yeah. But I love that tournament. That was a great tournament. I think you saw a lot of tough kids there because when you have that many matches to wrestle and you're seeing people from all around the state, it's a really good time. So, but I remember that day still. I still remember all those matches. I
mean, and Brock was always that guy, right? And I think that had a lot to do with some of our other guys being that way. He kind of set the tone. But when we go up to Oswego, it's a tough tournament, not only wrestling-wise, right? You're up in the snow. It's cold up there. It's a little different maybe than what we're accustomed to over here in Chappaqua. And for Brock to shine like that as a freshman at a tournament like that, it was pretty evident that he was going to be the real deal. And I even remember at sectionals that year, he didn't have a great tournament or anything, but he just wasn't there wrestling-wise. You know, but toughness, he was. I forgot who it was, who he wrestled, but I remember his first match. I remember him scrapping hard. I remember being like, this kid, you know, next year he'll be on the podium. Even if he doesn't learn another wrestling move, he'll be on the podium next year because he's going to will himself to do that. And not to go backwards a little bit, but I bet you Brock had a lot to do with guys like Jacob and Nate wrestling because they were neighbors.
Jacob was a freshman, I think, when Brock was a senior.
Yeah, same as Bronson. So
you used to call him Booger?
Yep.
That was a great.
We had nicknames for all the guys on the team. We had Socks, Booger, Nips. We had everything. But you know what? One funny thing is, I know we stayed in the same hotel every year that we went to Oswego, because that first year, Scotty and I and Mitchell and Kirby and Liam Mercer got into that pool, and we would swim laps. And I remember I got under the water in that pool, and it was a big, long pool. And I was like, I'm going to pretend it's overtime, and I'm going to swim to the other end and hold my breath. And the second I got to the other side of that pool, I tried doing it on the way back. It was just, this is overtime, this is overtime, this is overtime. I used to hate going back to that hotel because every time we would get into that pool, I knew what I was going to have to do. And I would always swim underneath and hold my breath for as long as we could. All the guys and I, we did it together. And that was kind of a funny thing. You know, it's one of those things you remember is just holding your breath in that pool for as long as you can.
Now, let me ask you a question. Did you ever, I think I know the answer, did you ever lose an overtime match in high school?
No, I actually never lost an overtime match in my entire career. And that was, I mean, you were with me down when we were at Virginia Beach when I was that state champ from Maine. And you were like, you know, whatever. I brought him out to the third period, and it was overtime, and I just looked over and I winked at you. And I took him, you know.
Yeah, your mannerisms when you wrestled were great.
Well, you know what? He said that wink thing. I totally forgot he did that, but that's not the only time he's ever done that. And
no.
I would always I love it. I would love it when he would. I would like smile and be like, okay, we're good. We're good to go here.
He was wrestling like Grella or Grella. Who else is the other tough guy from
he broke Grella. Well, I don't want to bounce around too much because I get crazy mind, but like he kind of broke Grella in the section finals because he just, even though Grella won, right, he just kept coming at him. And you could tell like Grella's dad was getting angry at me because of how I was coaching Brock, and Brock was losing, but I was like, get him again, stay on him. And it's it's just that mindset that I think that's not a learned thing, right? His dad was supportive. We were supportive. Everybody supports him, but you have to be a certain type of person, I think, to have that kind of mindset regardless, because you see siblings, right? You see siblings that are different, Nate and Jacob are different. People are different. Like Brock was Brock, and he just wanted it. And I think he always was that type of person. Do you have any fond memories, Brock? I know Oswego probably would have been the one for your freshman year, but do you have anything else you remember from your freshman year that was like, that stands out to you a little bit?
Yeah, I remember qualifying for sectionals with that match. I beat that kid from Neuro, and I literally jumped up in the air and I slammed my hands on it because I was just so happy. And DeBell was like, I was excited. My dad was excited. Everyone was like electric. And Bell's like, you have to be a robot. You can't show that much emotion. But I loved it so much. I was so happy when I qualified. I went out, I got the Mohawk, and I was with Scotty. I was so excited. That was a good time. Really
we talked about you and Scotty's in the wrestling room and how you guys used to battle. And Scotty was the same kind of guy.
Scotty was vicious. And so was Brock. But like Scotty, it's like, I think Scotty knew at the time that Brock wasn't, wrestling-wise, wasn't going to be able to beat him at that point. And Scotty liked the fact, I think, that Brock would give it back to him. I think
Brock was a great workout partner.
Never took him down once in my whole time wrestling him. And I would show up every day knowing he was going to try and choke me out. Every single day. He's going to literally try and put me out every day.
I feel like
tougher.
I feel like you need to know the kid too, right? Because I think if Scotty was doing that to other kids, it wouldn't be a positive. They would be like, I'm not wrestling. I'm not doing this. But I don't know if Scotty knew it. Maybe Scotty felt it. I'm not sure. Maybe that's just what Scotty was doing at the time. But it probably excelled Brock even faster, because he was that guy, if that makes sense, right? Like,
He would smile at him.
Yeah, he didn't mind at all. Like, he was crazy. Like, it was great. Those are good memories. Like we talked about with Marino, and this is not a slight at Brent Lobe and Billy Marino. We'll have them on later. Great ambassadors for the program, did a really good job for us, but they wanted nothing to do with Scotty that year, and probably not because they were scared. They just knew what it entailed to wrestle with him that year, and Brock was the polar opposite, where Brock probably wouldn't leave him alone. Brock was probably like, hey, let's go, let's wrestle. You want to go, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. And he probably did the same thing to me and whoever else. Like, he wanted those hard goes. He didn't want the easy go. And not that our guys don't do it now. Our guys are getting there. Funny side story, and I think Brock will enjoy this. So with the quarantine going on, Brock, we have I reach out to the kids still, and I'm trying to keep them active and keep them moving and keep them engaged. We Zoom twice a week and all that stuff. Yesterday, 2 days ago, I had them do a push-up challenge. Whoever could do the most push-ups in the day, whatever. That's the workout for today. And kids that have never done this, I got a message from Tommy Antes. He did 1,700. Diego Weiss did 1,600. Amatrado did 1,000. Izzy did 800, but she was working at the farm all day and did 800. And she told all the boys that she will beat them. She will beat that record. And they all seem to be pretty nervous about it, and I tend to believe her. But it's a great sport. It's a great sport, and we'll go into what Brock's doing right now at the end. I think more at the end of the interview, but I'm sure it has a lot to do with wrestling and his mindset and his work ethic and all that good stuff. I want to fast forward to sophomore year, and we'll go back and forth a little bit. I want to fast forward to sophomore year, and Brock could tell this, and I'm going to have Brock talk about it. He'll tell the story probably better than me, but I remember being at Pace, right, and we had that was our first good team. Like that, like we were okay before, but we had Scotty leading the way. Kirby was all section that year. Brent, Mitchell, Scotty, Brock, all these guys were all section. And Brock was sick as a dog. Brock had like a really high fever. I remember him sitting in the stands being sick as hell. And never once did he say, I'm not going to wrestle. Like, he was very ill. And he went out there, and not only did he go out, I think you might have beat somebody you lost to. Like, you had a great tournament, and you were not healthy. And I want you to speak on that a little bit and kind of what went into that.
Yeah, I remember I was in Spanish class because the way that it was set up is like we still had to go to the first 2 periods that day or something before we would leave for sectionals. So I was, or whatever way it was, because it wasn't on a weekend. I think it was on a weekday. I think
Friday, Saturday, probably.
Yeah. And I remember I was like, I'm sick as a dog. I was sweating and it was cold. And I went and I took my temperature at the nurse, and they were like, oh, you have 106-degree fever. And I was like, I called my mom. I was like, hey, how high is 106? Like, whatever. And she was like, you have 106 fever. You're not wrestling, you're not whatever. I was like, no, my friend. It's somebody. And that whole tournament, I avoided him. because I didn't want her to see how sick I was. And I still remember going out there, and I would sleep in between the matches because I was so sick. And after we finished, I think I was home for like a week from school. But I was like, there's no way I'm not going to wrestle. There's just nothing. Like, I'll die on the mat. There's no way I'm not going to wrestle in this tournament. And I went out and I had a blast. I didn't feel sick while I was wrestling. I was able to turn it off. But right after, every time, I was like crazy.
Who was the kid? Who was the kid that beat you that you got back? You got a win back on somebody. Do you remember who it was?
There was an Arlington kid, Tyler Goings, and I had a close match. He was an East Ramapo kid, and I beat him in divisionals. But I was nervous about that match for sectionals, and I beat him again. There were a couple kids. There was that other kid who this was another time I winked at DeBellis. He put both legs in on me, and Scotty used to love to put both legs in on me. And that's the kid that I dumped. He was like a Mayapack kid. I dumped him at the last second, and I stuck him, and he was up like 8 points. And I was just waiting for him to he was the tall, lanky, blonde kid. I forget where he was from. But yeah, that was a great tournament. That was a really good tournament.
You know, Coach, I was thinking before we interviewed him, you know, and these are things I remember anyways, but, you know, you try to think of them. And that sophomore year was maybe even one of my more fond memories because the way I'm thinking as a coach now, and, you know, my perspective changes, everybody's perspective changes. I want everybody to win state championships and all that great stuff, and more for them than us. But, like, when you see somebody that has that type of will, you know, I don't care if you take fifth or sixth or whatever it is. Like, if you're able to overcome that type of adversity and succeed, you know, that's going to come in handy for Brock's business now. It's going to come in handy when he's a dad and all that stuff. And thinking back to his career, like, that was a very pivotal moment for, you know, knowing what type of person he was, because he's saying things like, I would die on the mat. Now, most high school kids aren't going to say that. I don't expect them to, right? But maybe that's how my mindset kind of is sometimes too, because you put so much work into this. It's not a game, right? If some people want to take it as a game, that's okay. You know, I want people to wrestle. You know, I want people to wrestle and enjoy the sport. But, you know, to me, it's more of a life. You know, you're out there, you're fighting for your life technically when you're wrestling. Like, and he had that mindset and he followed through. I don't think anybody else, you know, maybe, you know, guys like Jay Barron and Matt now, but anybody else that's gone through our program would have had, and that's including guys that were great at that time, would have had that mindset. Like, there might have been, if we give kids nowadays, and it's not our program in general, an escape route, they take it. A lot of kids, right? The plan is not to. And Brock was the opposite. He wouldn't take the escape route. He would embrace the struggle. Do you have any other fond memories, Brock, at 10th grade you remember, or that was the one?
I remember wrestling with Sammy Tugendtoft every day when I wasn't wrestling with Scotty. When you would take Scotty, I would wrestle with Sammy. And, like, that was, like, I was probably not as good as him even then. Like, it was just tough. And he would leave every day with black eyes. I would leave every day with black eyes. We would just brawl. And I just remember going there every day. And, like, I had so much respect for him and for Scott because we would go after. I would go with Brent or I would go with Billy. And I just remember that. I remember sophomore year being when I knew I could be better than I was because I had guys around me who were good and tough and willing to fight too. We had a great team. Mitchell and Bing Bing and Kirby and Scott and Liam. Like, we all hung out outside of wrestling too. That was like a really, you know, that was a good bond that we had. That was one of the better things about that year is we just built a real team. It was more than that at that point. We were having dinners with each other's families. We were out together. You know, that was when it became more like a family atmosphere. And when I was a captain, that was the thing that mattered to me the most. You know, we would go hunting together on the weekends, or we would go, you know, to Target, just whatever. Like, we just did whatever. And that was the thing that mattered the most to me is, like, you know, kids felt like they had a family when we were there. And that was probably one of the things I was more proud of was having everybody together.
I think the guys are doing a good job of that now again, right? Like, I think Jacob, Matt, and Aaron did a really good job of it too. I think there might have been a little bit of a disconnect with those three. They were great leaders, but they were so good. And other guys maybe didn't feel like they could keep up with that pace. I think now, and Izzy really did a really good job this year of it, keeping everybody together. And now Michael and all of them, you know, they're buddies. And I like that, you know, like with the group chats and these workouts we're doing through quarantine, they're joking with each other, they're busting each other's chops, whatever. But you could tell that they're happy to talk. They're happy to be engaged, and they're happy to be part of that family like Brock was talking about. And, you know, I still talk to Brock. I still talk to Scotty. I still talk to Kirby. I still talk, you know, when you go through war like wrestling, it's different than other sports. I think it builds different relationships. And I kind of wish other parents and kids knew kind of I don't want to use the word fraternity because I really am not a huge fan of fraternities, but it's like a special kind of fraternity, if you want to put it that way. Like, Scotty said, I don't know if this is true, but Scotty said that you still text him sometimes, Brock, asking him if he wants to go.
And I still never take him down. He won't let me try now. Anytime I see him, I always tell him, and if he likes, I always call him out. But he won't let me.
You would have to clear the room because those are two big boys now. I mean, geez Louise.
Yeah.
Scotty's big too.
We had to clear the room then. We had that huge room, and somehow they ended up outside.
Yeah, so in that little room, it'll be like two bulls in a china cabinet. It's probably not
forget it. They would not be able to wrestle in there.
No way. And
our room is the old weight room, Brock. I think you've seen it.
They'll be physical, and me and you would be like, they're not in high school anymore, so we probably should stop this. This is not
a football field.
Not a good idea. It should be the 100-yard football field. We'll let them go at it on the field. But yeah, that was great.
Watching this. I'm waiting for you, buddy. So you just give me a time and a day.
I love it. Well, something similar you said, I'll bring it up later. Senior year was probably one of my favorite moments as well. Like, I freaking loved it. But
I got a couple from the senior year.
So we're in jump through though, right? We can go back to all of it, right? I want to chronologically go through because Brock had such a great career. I don't want to miss anything. So we'll go freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Then we can go back at the whole picture of it, right? And then talk about some other stuff. But now let's jump to junior year. Scotty wrestled. Remember we talked about how Scotty choked out, not purposely, he had an assassin, the kid from Clarkstown South, and he tapped out or whatever.
Yeah.
That kid wasn't bad. That kid was not bad. And then the next year, we knew that Grella was the guy to beat, but there was a formidable opponent, that Clarkstown South kid. He wasn't bad. He wasn't a bad wrestler at all. And we go into that match, I believe it was at Clarkstown South, and we're in the semis there. And it was a battle. But Brock was chasing this kid down the whole time. The kid did not want to wrestle. He was trying to keep it close and kind of steal one away from Brock. And I remember, I think it went into overtime. Yep. And Brock outgunned him, completely outgunned him. I think Brandon Rogers came up to us after and said the guy with more heart won, or something along that line. And
Brock, right, Brock? Didn't Brandon Rogers say something to you?
Yeah, because they knew, like, I think whoever the guy was at the time who was reporting on wrestling, the Vin or whatever his name was from Ohad, he had me picked to lose. And that really got in my head because I was the second seed, and I also just thought I was better than this kid. And he was tough, and he was really strong. He was a really bad matchup for me because I would go straight on, and he came straight on too. And I knew I just had to – every time I touch this kid's head, I'm going to try and break his neck. And I would just club him. And when we got into overtime, he was so tired that when I got him in that – I brought him into a Russian, I just pulled him down, and he just went. And I knew that he wanted to go. And I knew that once I had him in overtime that it was mine. But that was a tough match. It was one of my tougher matches ever because it was just the matchup of styles was a tough one. And he was training at Clarkstown South. They had a great heavyweight program. Those guys they knew how to wrestle heavyweights. And I never would have went to states if I didn't win that match because if I hadn't made it into the finals of my sectionals, 11th grade, I never would have gotten the wild card senior year. So that just shows you how much of that, sometimes you just win by a hair and that can change everything. I never would have went to states.
You probably cost me a couple years of my life on some of those matches, but but that shows how much you love wrestling, especially a guy like Brock that deserves to win. He's working his butt off. You really want to see that, right? So it's hard sometimes as a coach in the corner. But at the same time, Brock, you gave us that comfort where, like Coach said, you never lost in overtime. So if it was razor close, I felt very comfortable that Brock will find a way to win. The times he lost, it was because he just got beat by a couple points. It just was a little bit too much to make the margin up. And again, when you go into that Grella match in the finals there and he lost, it was a bad matchup, I think. Same thing, right? Like Grella was a strong guy. Brock liked to come forward. Grella was really good at changing levels and attacking when Brock was moving forward. But he wore him down. And, Izzy, similar to Izzy in a sense where – a couple times she lost matches where I was probably more proud of her in a loss than I would have been in the win, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier in this thing that, wrestling ends and we need that right mindset. He outworked the kid. He lost, but he outworked the kid. And to me, that's almost a win. Do you remember that match a little bit, Brock? That's junior finals there.
Yeah, that match was good. I didn't wrestle the way I should have. The divisionals finals match against Grella, I think, was the best time I wrestled him. That was when I took him down and then I let him up. And that's my favorite memory from junior year, easy. Because the whole year my dad was just watching me get taken down and let back up. And I knew it just ate away at my dad. My dad hated it. And I remember when I took him down in the division finals and I went to let him up and I looked at my dad, that was just the best feeling in the world.
That's awesome.
My dad had watched me get taken down relentlessly for that whole year. And he would just take me down, hold my head, let me up. And it was just demoralizing. And I took him down and he sucked on bottom. I probably should have stayed on top strategically and maybe I could have turned him. But I was like, no, this guy's going to feel what that feels like. And I held his head and I let him get up. Busted my head open that match. And I split it. And they had to wrap me up and coach did that funny rig. And I still have that picture. That was awesome. But
yeah, that's an awesome picture.
Yeah.
It always seems to happen in divisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously.
That's awesome.
I remember Grella after that match sitting. I really thought he was concussed. I thought he was – because he was sitting there like just shaking his head and sitting on the stands.
Well, nobody looked forward to wrestling Brock.
No.
Nobody looked forward to it. And I love that. Even me, as Brock got older, it got a lot harder to wrestle with him. And that goes both ways, right? Like I loved wrestling with Brock at the same time because he was getting better. I was helping him get better, and I like to work out and all that stuff. But I knew as a coach, as a guy that already wrestled Division I and all these things, even when even as a sophomore and stuff, when his technique wasn't there yet, that he was going to get somebody tired. He's going to get you tired. He's going to come at you. He's going to give you all he has. He's not going to lay down. He's going to fight. So people around the section knew that. They knew that, and that included Grella. Like, I don't care how big of a favorite Grella was going into that match in the section finals. He was not excited to see Brock standing on the other side, And again, to me, it's like the small victories. You're in that guy's head, and forever you'll know that you didn't back down, and that's something that is important, to me at least. And I think to Brock, and I think to, Coach DeBellis and people that really care about the sport and what it means. So let's jump to senior year. So for senior year, and Brock almost was really unlucky in the sense where Grella was a really good wrestler, and then Yusef was, I'd put him up there with Brian Rebuto as one of the best guys to come out of Section 1 in a really, really long time. The kid was a friggin' stud and tough, so it wasn't like Brock's not tough anybody, but Yusef's not going to lay down, and he's very good at wrestling, and he's athletically gifted as they come, and he went on to be a two-time Division I All-American, U23 World Team member. He's still training for Olympics and things of that nature. Good kid, respected the crap out of Brock. And I want to talk about the whole series with him. But before we even get there, I want to make it clear, too, that for people listening, and it's happened to us a couple times. It happened with Scotty, with Logan. We could have ran from him. We didn't. If Brock went 285 that year, he would have walked through the section. And I think
He might have won a state title.
He might have, yeah. But it was Brock's mindset. He didn't want to run from the guy. I think I was more on the same page as him with that, but I probably presented it to him, once, said, hey, this is an option. I don't remember if I did or not, but
yeah.
That's a mindset too. That's
brought it up a couple of times, and every time he said, nope, I'm not running from anybody. I'm going 215 or 220.
Let's not even get into the matches yet, Brock. Do you remember your decision to say, hey, this guy's really good. I could go up, and you knew it. You knew you would beat that kid from Mayapack. I think we wrestled him at section practices when we went there, and you kicked the crap out. Yeah.
He was light too. He wasn't. He was light. He went.
He ran from us. He ran from us.
Yeah, he ran. And he didn't do bad at states either. He's not like a horrible wrestler, but he wasn't on their level.
No, he was. Yeah, he was definitely pretty good. I mean,
he was good. Yeah. He was a full
move, but he wouldn't have been able to. He wouldn't have been able to move that fast.
Do you remember?
I pinned him in the section, or no, in the state practices when we were training. And I had seen him coach when you and I went to that Mayapack practice, in the summer. You came out with me, and his coaches, I think that's when they made the decision. They said, you shouldn't stay in this weight class because they knew that I would beat him. And I remember, he was the whole year, he was bouncing back between 220, 285. I think he was really going to make a decision which weight he was going to go. He was trying to keep it pretty even. But I remember when I pinned him at the state finals, I lost a lot of respect because that's just not what the sport's about. I think, running from anybody, it made me feel better because I was like, you know what, I could have went up to 285 and I didn't. I'm here and I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight at the weight that I am. And it was never really an option. I mean, my dad believed in me. My mom believed in me, which made me believe in myself. I really thought up until when I lost to Yusuf that I was going to beat Yusuf every time. Like literally every time I went in thinking this is going to be the match that I beat him. And first of all, when you have people who believe in that, like believe in you like that, you guys did too. I think, to some level, even though he was a lot better, you owe it to yourself to believe in yourself like that too. You can't let someone else believe in you more than you believe in yourself. The second thing is it's not track. You're not here to run. You know what I'm saying? Like the reason that you're wrestling at whatever weight you're wrestling at is because that's your weight. You want to find out who the best guy is at that weight. And if you have Yusuf, who probably is one of the better guys who went through Section 1, I have a ton of respect for him. I think he's a great guy too. You have to go and fight it out. What is the sport if everybody jumps to dodge each other? You know, what's that medal worth if you took it because you ran from somebody else? I think that defeats the entire purpose. So it was never really an option for me. It wouldn't have meant anything to me if I won. Just like when they handed me that 4th place medal at States.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
It wasn't my medal. The kid from whatever beat me. I gave it to him. It wasn't mine. I didn't earn it.
I want to talk about that again, too. I'll bring that back up because that's really cool. I remember that vividly. But to go back to the Yusuf thing and staying in his weight class, you know, we'd had the same thing with Jacob and Logan, right? Nobody probably on planet Earth believed that Jacob could beat Logan, but he did, you know, and I did. But it was a little different with Brock and Yusuf because Yusuf was a club guy, so I knew Yusuf really well. But I knew Brock could beat him. Like, and I'm going to go into this the thing what really made me, even to the state semifinals, that might have been the most confident I thought Brock was going to win that match.
He had a great section finals match. I mean, I think it was 5-3.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I was talking about. But, yeah, he had a great section finals match.
Yeah.
But, what was I going to say? But the idea, like Brock said, and this is like when you go back to my college career, too, as a wrestler, like my senior year, I wrestled 197. I had no business doing that. But I probably could have done better at 165. But I have no regrets because I did it for the team. I did it for a bigger reason than me. And I was confident I could hang. And Brock, you know, he really believed in it. It was so cool to see that. And I love the idea of that, right? I love that we had 2 of our best guys that have ever come through our program. Both had studs in their weight class, and there was no leaving. It wasn't happening. And I would like to think that's a reflection on the program a little bit, but that's obviously a reflection on Brock and Jacob. But, man, like what kind of – you give most of these kids in Section 1, even our superstars, an option to move. If somebody's beating them, they're moving. You know, you see that a lot at like sectionals and that stuff, people bouncing around weight classes and trying to get away from people. But not our guys. And you know, maybe Jacob got that a little bit from Brock. You know, maybe he saw that and he thought like, you know, he didn't run. Why am I going to run? You know, there's a lot that could go into it, right? There's a lot to go into it. Now let's get into the matches. I just want
to touch on something there. If it's okay.
Yeah.
The other part of it that was so big for me is like I was a captain at the time, and like Yusuf might have been a lot better than me, but you had guys like Max Browdy who had a ton of heart, right? And he had to go out there every day and wrestle somebody who he knew was probably better than him. What type of example are you setting as a captain or as a leader on the team if, hey, you have to go out and wrestle that guy who's going to beat the snot out of you, but when it's my turn, I'm going to jump ship? I just didn't think that was, you know, I didn't think that was ever the correct kind of example to set. And I think that's one of the things that you guys would never encourage anybody to jump weights for anything. And I think that it trickles down from the coaches. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No. Let's get everything out. But so when's the first time you wrestled? Was it Shoreline you wrestled him?
Well, I wrestled him. He came out. One of the things that I love about you, anytime I asked him to wrestle, he would come out and do it. Yeah. Him and I had a proper match at Olympic out in Jersey, and we had a good match. He slammed me, and I actually got a takedown on him, which I think was one of the only times I took him down. But that was the first time I actually wrestled him in like a 2-2-2. And then Shoreline was the first time we actually squared up where it was officiated. And I remember that match pretty well.
It was a close match. It wasn't
4-2 or 5-2.
Every match pretty much was like a 4-2,
5-2.
Yeah, a lot of the same there. You know, we get and like Brock said, if he doesn't do what he does his junior year, he probably doesn't get that wild card, right? But same token, if he goes 285, he's going to states anyways. But you know, he was hard set on what he was going to do, and that was that. Gets to section finals, tough match there. I think that, like you said, that was probably the best match.
That was because he smoked me when we went to states. He beat me 7-1. But when we were in the section finals, I think it was 5-3, and I was almost in on a takedown.
You were on the comeback, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he took me down early like he always would with either the Russian or the underhook. But it was the end of the match where I was in on a leg or something. I just remember that was when I was so close I could taste it. And that's what gave me the confidence when I was going to states and I saw him in the semis. I thought that was my time, which would have been pretty cool.
Coach, do you remember that moment that I was talking about? That was one of my favorite moments. We were out to dinner with like A-Rod and maybe the New Rochelle coaches. It might have been like Eddie Ortiz or something like that.
The article?
And the article came out because it comes out the night before. So I'm sitting there reading the quotes, and I was incredible. And, you know, and Brock knows this, and other people on the team know that, like, I coach an Empire also, and I love those kids. But when it comes to a Greeley versus an Empire guy, it's always Greeley, you know, no matter what. And Yusef knew that too, you know. If he needed help, I would help him. But when it came, you know, I'm not going over Russian defense with him. Like, I'm not trying. It's not – you're not going to learn how to beat Brock. But if you want to wrestle a little bit, I'll wrestle. You know, that's my job too, right? But I wanted Brock to win so bad. And then when we saw that article came out, I was so fired up. I was like, this guy. But think about that mindset, right, that you had to have. Because it wasn't delusion, because you lost him 5-3. It wasn't like out of the realm of possibilities. But to be 0-2 against him, and to be able to say, I'm gonna drag him into deep waters and drown him. You gotta love it, right? You gotta love it. How else is he supposed to go to war, right? How are you gonna do it, right? The guy's really good. Like we said, he's one of the guys, probably at the time, was pound for pound one of the best guys in the entire state. And you know, you're not scared. If you're scared, you know, Brock didn't wrestle his best match that day. He tried his hardest, but he didn't wrestle his best match. Yusef wrestled a really good match, but if he's scared, it's 15-1, you know, or whatever. It's different. It's not, you know, Yusef probably read that. I was like, oh, God, this guy is coming for me tomorrow. Do you remember that, Brock? Like the article and the mindset you had going into that match?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about it a couple weeks ago because I wish I hadn't said it, even though it was great at the time. I wish I just would have let my actions speak. Because one of the things was I went into that match, it was so binary for me. It was, oh, you're either going to beat the snot out of this kid. And I went out the first 30 seconds, like I threw it all out there because I was so sure that I was going to win. I was like, I'm going to stick him. I'm going to, you know, whatever. Or I was going to bring him into overtime. So as the score started to pile up, the weight came on. And then you're like, you know what? Like I should have been more strategic about this. But I don't regret that by any means, though. I think it was funny, and that just was my mindset at the time. I was like, I'm literally going to drag him into overtime, and then I'm going to take him down. And that was, I believed that wholeheartedly the whole time. And that was also pretty cool because I remember you came back from dinner and you were so excited about that.
Well, you know what you're talking about, belief, right? He was talking about belief before, and I always thought he could beat him, right? I always thought Brock could beat Yusef, but you know, 0-2, Yusef's really good. As a coach, I would never display it to a Brock or a Jacob, but you think about scenarios of like, well, this guy's good here. We might have trouble with this and whatever. Mm-hmm. After reading that article, I was 100% in. I was like, he's going to beat this freaking kid. He's going to – if anybody could beat him, it's going to be Brock, and he has the right mind to do it, and he's going to do it. And it didn't happen, right? But, you know, like Brock said, let your actions speak, but I think it depends on how you go about it, right? If you're a cocky jerk for no reason, that's one thing. But when you're saying it in the right way, and even win or lose, if you have a son one day or whatever, you could show him that article and be like, "This, I was really that guy. Like this was really me. I put it out." So, you know, it would be one thing if you told me and DeBellis, but he had the, lack for a better word, the balls to let everybody know I'm coming for this guy. You know, and I think that again takes a certain type of person, and it's all about. I loved it, and I still to this day think about it and love it, and it makes me smile whenever I think about it. So that was great. Now let's fast forward to what you were talking about before, and another Brock moment that I'll never forget, but stands out to me of what kind of person he is. So he lost to the Catholic school kid in the Conti semis, I believe. Kid was a good wrestler. I think that was not Brock's best match. I think he beats him if he wrestles him again there. But you know, the kid was tough. Loses, Brock comes in fifth. But being that the kid was a Catholic school kid, they used to do the federation and the whatever, like the two medals. I think they got rid of that this year. But so they did that. So Brock goes on the podium. He gets the 5th place medal. Catholic school kid's in 4th or whatever. They get off the podium. Brock moves up to 4th. Some random guy comes from 7th into 6th. Brock gets the 4th place medal. And it was still in Pepsi Arena or Times Union Center, whatever you want to call it. And I'll never forget. I was sitting on the wall, the ice hockey wall, and all of a sudden, like Brock jumps over it, and I see him running up to the stands, and he's handing this kid his medal or whatever. I'm like, wait, what is he doing? And then you said what you pretty much said to us, Brock, and speak on it now. I guess go ahead, but like that was just crazy to me and awesome at the same time.
Well, I didn't like that they structured it that way. I think you try and figure out who the best in the state is, and that's what I wanted to know. Like, if I won, I wanted you're the best kid in the state at this weight class. So the fact that they take it out public versus whatever, that meant nothing to me. And he beat me, and he was better than me. I totally think I could have beat him if I did it again. I remember going to that match, I hadn't had a single takedown the entire tournament. It was all either I pinned the first kid, I beat the second kid with, I turned him and I got some points there, I got an escape, whatever. But I hadn't had a takedown. So I went into that match. I'm like, I'm not going through the whole state tournament without a takedown. I went to throw him and I gave up, 4 points or whatever I gave up. So I knew I could have beat him, but regardless, it didn't matter. It wasn't my medal. I didn't take fourth. I didn't want fourth on anything. I wasn't the fourth best kid in the state. I didn't want fourth on anything. So I gave it to him. And I think that's the way the sport should be. I think that if you know someone's better, then you let it be that way and expect it in return. But yeah.
And we've listed it as fifth.
I know. I appreciate that.
I know. I was like Brock, but I do respect that.
It's a mature thing. It's mature because think about it. Like if that was me, I probably would have took both medals. I wouldn't even have thought of it. I just would have been like, whatever, I'm getting to. It wouldn't have registered, right? Like, and maybe when I was a little older, I'd be like, why do I have this fourth place medal? I can't even fit. But for an 18-year-old guy to say, to think like that rational in a sense, like, I didn't come in, that guy did, and to understand how that was broken down is wild to me. It's awesome. But I mean, it's the right mindset because it's true. It shouldn't be like that. It should be that, whoever placed the highest and that is what it is. You lose. And what's the difference really between fifth and fourth? You're there, you wrestled your butt off, you're all state. You want to win the tournament. So what are you going to do with that, fourth place medal? But man, that was a great ride, and then you did some more stuff there did you go to nationals your junior year only, or did you do it your senior year too? I don't remember.
I went my junior year. I didn't go my senior year.
Okay. But, so to think back a little bit, and I think we kind of probably touched on it a bit through those 4 years, but out of all those moments specifically, which one of those moments, and it could be a broader answer than one specific moment, I guess, but what was like one thing that you look back on to this day that you were like the most proud of that moment? Like that was the best.
There are a couple, like as a wrestler, it was probably when I pinned the kid in the first round of states, because I was 12th seed. I was wrestling the 5th seed or whatever. And I actually hit him with Scotty's 3/4, which is funny. But I remember I won that match and I pointed up into the stands, and everybody who came out to support me like jumped up, and it was just electric. And that made me proud because it was everybody who had believed in me when I wasn't a good wrestler, when I was, whatever, my dad who had been there since I was a kid, finally getting to see that on that stage. And that was really powerful. And that carried me through the rest of the tournament. That's what gave me that confidence, to go after Yusuf and to go after those guys, because everybody who had believed in me, now I was showing them, look, I was right, and that was cool. But as a captain, which is one of the things that was more important to me, it was like, when guys like Max Browdy would win a match, when we would show up for those fall workouts at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was telling the kids like, hey, we're going to run 6 miles today and we're going to do 200 push-ups or whatever, crazy stuff like that. And I would watch the kids pour in and they would show up. That was powerful for me because that was different. That was like, they didn't have to be there. They, and having that type of influence and having other people be able to do well, that mattered a lot to me. So those two things probably.
Do you know what I find interesting? And Brock might find this interesting too, but Coach, in a lot of our interviews so far, when I've asked people what their most meaningful or most proud moment wrestling, and most of the people that we're interviewing have been pretty successful, right? Most of their proudest moments aren't the big win they had, right? Like Brock's talking about, I mean, it was a big win, but it was a round of 16, right? It wasn't to place at states. It wasn't to get into the semis. It wasn't, his junior year, winning the semis to be in the section finals for the first time, or his first time becoming all section, like something with a substantial, thing around it, right? Like it was a moment where like he worked his butt off and he felt it and it showed and he was proud of it. And then, the captain moment I think is really cool too, because, that changed a lot of things. Like you said, Jay was a freshman, right? So that has a lot to do with maybe his mentality, because out of all the guys we coached, and Aaron and Matt worked their tails off too, just a little differently than Jacob, right? Jacob was the workhorse. Brock was a workhorse. And I think that had something to do with Brock. And it's pretty cool to see that, what's the word when it joins together, I guess, connection. I don't know. But like, it's cool to see that. I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, Brock, but I'm sure you do. After practice, he would stay, work out, right? And then I'd leave the gym sometimes and I'd come back in, and he would be doing stance in motion and climbing the rope. And he would be visualizing like state championship or whatever it was. Brock, talk a little bit maybe about your mindset, right? Like how, like we kind of touched upon it, I guess, through everything we just said, but like, what made you do things like that? You know, what made you tick like that?
It was just belief, like trying to, reinforce that belief that you could have it. I remember on snow days, Jacob and Nick Phillips and I, we would all meet up and we would just, there was this hill behind my house. We would just run it and run it and run it and run it. And it was like, almost like you're trying to prove to yourself, like, hey, you deserve this. You're going to earn it. You're going to have it. And that was what it was all about. I mean, I would shadow wrestle before I would go to bed until I was like literally so exhausted.
I remember that. We were in Virginia. You're hand fighting with your father. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. My dad was the best with that. Warming up before matches, shadow wrestling with me anytime I would want to.
Warming up before matches. I think I still have neck problems for some of before some of his matches.
Broke my toe.
Huh?
At sections junior year, I think.
We basically went live. Standing up without taking shots. I'm like, what is happening?
Tor, you saved my life one time over at Empire.
What happened?
I was wrestling Brock, and he had me in a front headlock, and it was supposed to be like a 2-minute go. It was like 20 seconds in, he had me in a front headlock, and you blew the whistle.
I said time.
Yeah. I might have got choked out.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun.
No, that was some heck of a ride.
One
of my proudest moments was the Oswego tournament.
Sorry, Coach. Go ahead. What'd you say?
His senior year, when he got. First of all, we're in a tournament. He gets hit for stalling because he doesn't do a mat return. The guy stands up. Brock's trying to return him. Gets hit for stalling. Comes back up to his feet. Brock hits a beautiful mat return.
Legal.
The guy doesn't defend himself.
Perfectly fine, though.
And then he doesn't come back out.
He handled himself like a man, though.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, it could have got crazy. And Brock just said, listen, I don't want to be here anymore. I said, let's go. And we got out of there. I think we went to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah. Well, and Brock could talk on that story a little bit, too. I have a couple other things I want to touch on before we wrap up. But, Brock and Scotty, Bing Bing, Jacob, even Aaron and Matt, had moments where they got a little chippy and done things that might have been questionable, which I'm okay with. It's a tough sport, right? It happens. But he did nothing wrong in that mat return. It was a perfectly legal, fine mat return. I remember losing my mind. Is this on two fronts, right? One, that they would call that, and two, that the coach would allow that to happen. We would never allow that to happen. And Brock handling like a man, placing at Eastern States 2 weeks later, and that kid not placing at Eastern States. And the fact that kid was able to wrestle at Eastern States. If you had such a bad head injury, how the hell are you going to be over there? So there's a lot that added up on that. But Brock always handled it with class, and it's part of the game.
And what does that mean, that Ken Haynes Invitational Championship?
Nothing. Yeah. Especially if you win like that. Brock's sophomore year when he won, sophomore or junior year? Sophomore year. When he won, that's
I think. Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to win.
Amazing. 9th freshman year, first sophomore
True.
year.
But I mean, it's amazing. It's cool to win when you earned it, right? If you worked your ass off, Oswego tournament's a tough tournament. So to win that tournament, that's a cool feeling. Who the hell wants to win the way that kid won? That's worthless to me, So to each their own, I guess. But how Brock handled that was great. He keeps speaking about his dad. I want to bring up the fact that we brought up in a bunch of interviews parental support, right? You can't do it. I mean, I guess there are kids out there, unfortunately, that have gotten it done with not as much parental support. But we're lucky in that sense, right? Now, Brock was training at Olympic for most of his high school career. That's not a close drive, right? His dad would be taking him out there to train every tournament. I remember Brock's dad at Oswego. What did he do? Somebody was sick.
Oh, no.
He drove
You brought it up before. No, every year he would be shuttling people back and forth.
But there was one time
he had
to drive somebody halfway somewhere and then come back to make Brock's match.
Maybe Neil Steiner.
Your dad will know. Oh, it was. I think it was. It was Neil Steiner.
Got sick or something.
And, because these dads, we talk about Schreiber, Wendy Ferreira, the Walks. I hate when I list it because I don't want to leave anybody out because we have so many good parents. But, Brock's dad wasn't only there for Brock. He was there for the other kids on the team, and that's important.
Brock's mom did all the concessions and all that stuff.
Mom. I always tend to talk about the dads because I think they're interesting more. But they still
have the Eat 'em Up Greeley High.
Yeah.
That Corinna made.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a family,
Well, Wendy kind of took over some of the stuff Brock's mom. It's like a ladder effect almost, where we're very lucky in that sense where our parents were just as bought in as our athletes. And
They all
because I
work.
think they see what it was doing for their kids, you know, and they love their kids and they want them to succeed and they want them to be happy. And we're very lucky in that regard. And Brock's parents are right up there with people that they were involved, like they were there. Like I can't think of anything when they weren't there, you know. And that's great, and I appreciate that. I'm sure Brock appreciates that too.
So
you can speak on some of that, Brock, some of the commitment your dad and mom had to do, I guess, to get you to where you were.
It was everything. I mean, my dad and my mom would drive me out an hour each way to go to Olympic. They would wait in the car while I was wrestling. Those practices, I mean, we would get done at 8 or 9 at night, and it would be like, you know, my dad would have work the next day, and he was driving me home. We were getting home at 10. It was crazy. They were, you know, paying for that, all that, obviously, and they were doing everything. I mean, my mom would cook me. One week I would say I'm only eating chicken. The next week I'd say whatever craziness, and she would bend with that. But the biggest thing I think that was from them is just belief. Like no matter what, they were like, "You're going to do it. You can totally do it." They had full faith in me, and I think that was the biggest thing for me. You know, having other people who believed in me was huge for me. It's huge.
So, I mean, it probably helped too that his dad had a wrestling background too and understood. What were you gonna say, Coach? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say, Brock, you're now running a company up in Binghamton. You want to speak about that?
Yeah. When I was here freshman, sophomore year, actually my landlord was an ex-wrestler. He had wrestled for BU. His son was Eric Rittenberg. And I was managing his properties. So I started a little property management company. I went down to NYU. I was using that company to pay for part of it. And I worked at JP Morgan for a year, and then I came back up here, and that's what we do. We do real estate, so management and construction and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I started when I was a freshman while I was wrestling.
You interested in 2 buildings in Utica? We'll talk after the interview. They're for sale.
I mean, but I have 2 more things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the whole process and his remembrance of how the Greeley program was and what he went through in that. We'll end with that, I guess. But like, if we're talking about the company, right, in the business, do you take lessons you learned maybe through wrestling to help you achieve things that you're looking to achieve through your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you're going to be good at anything, you take the same steps that you take, like everything, you take the same steps that you take to be good at anything. And whether it's like leading the guys that work for us or also just the work ethic that goes into running a company yourself, all those things are things that I learned from wrestling. And it's, you know, I think it stays with you for life. So.
I love to hear stuff like that because I really feel, for me, wrestling's a driving force for everything I do. And when you hear it for other people, you know, and you know that they have that same effect, it's really cool. My last question, Brock, and then we'll wrap up. And we could, you know, you could speak on whatever you want to speak on too, Brock, and Coach Cvijanovich if you have any more questions, obviously. But what do you remember, like what stands out to you, Brock, in the process of it all with us, right? Like the talks we would have at the end of practice, the workouts, the mindset we try to instill. Like, are there things that stand out to you that maybe were beneficial? Maybe, you know, we could have done different. Like what in your head from your high school experience wrestling, you know, whether it was beating on my head at practice or whatever it was, like, do things stand out to you? Like, do you remember things like that, like, you know, were influential or whatever?
I think one of the you guys were obviously the best coaching staff that I ever had, and whether it was in college, high school, et cetera. And the best thing about the Greeley program that I think makes it what it is you guys are you're really good role models, and you also each play to your own strengths. I mean, you were really, Coach, you know, DeBellis was really good at teaching me what I was good at, and also kind of showing how to lead the team. And Tori, you like really honed the skills that I had, you know, to make them what they were. And Marino and Danny, when they were there, when I was there, they both had their own roles too. I think that's one of the better things is like just being able to tell what somebody's good at, being able to tell what they're not good at, and encouraging them and giving them the belief that what they are good at can make them good. So I think that's one of the great things. And also, like, you guys were around the clock. Like, I asked DeBellis to come down to Virginia with me, and he literally drove down to my house. We drove down. We spent like a couple of days there. We stayed in a hotel room all together. And it was like, he didn't have to be there. It was, you know, it was well after wrestling season. And that was just the thing. I mean, everybody was willing to go all in, all the coaches, all the parents. It just makes it a conducive environment to have something great happen. You have everybody who's just willing to give everything. So.
Brock, I got to ask you a question about Binghamton and Kid States. Is it true that you told the waitress that it was my birthday?
I don't remember, but I do remember. Isn't it funny that we came to Kid States up here, like all the way back in 6th grade or something? I think my dad.
Yeah. Do you remember it was your last match and the fire alarm went off?
Yeah.
We had to stay outside for 2 hours,
Yep.
and then you went in and you beat the kid, and we left.
Yep.
Wait, was that the same tournament that Schreiber was talking about? It was your birthday.
Yes.
Wow, so
Yes.
they all were at that same tournament together.
Yes.
That's interesting too.
Yes.
You
We
know,
had a good
generations.
Yeah, those guys were the group that was willing to do the extra. It was the kids and the parents. The coaches, we're one thing, but the parents have to be willing to do it, and the kids have to want to do it. And that whole group, think about it. In that Binghamton tournament, it was Brock, Jacob, Matthew, Aaron, all those guys.
Wasn't Dr. Marino there too?
Dr. Marino was a coach with us in the youth. He was awesome.
Yeah.
And
we should
Billy
get
Johnson, Reggie Williams.
We should talk to Marino.
Yeah, Dr. Marino would be a good interview.
Well, with his son, maybe we'll get him on at the same time because I don't know how
That's a
many
good
more.
idea.
I don't know how many more we could do, so I might have to start jamming people together. But
Yeah, my wife's not happy. Wait till her interview.
oh, it's gonna be. But so for me, Brock, I'm gonna end with my wrap up, but you can have the last words. So super proud of Brock. He changed the culture. I mean, Scotty kind of started it, but Brock carried it on and I think took it a level higher. Like Scotty was great, but he wasn't meeting people at 6 a.m, starting runs and doing stuff of that nature. We saw it as a freshman, as a sophomore. That story might be my favorite out of all of them, being sick as hell and still finding a way to get on the podium and not complaining to me once about it. I don't think I heard about it. I heard about it through like the grapevine and saw him in the stands. And, we're proud of what he did in, college, Binghamton and NYU, which is an unbelievable school. And now he's up there doing his business, working hard. The business will continue to grow. I'm excited to see where he is in 10 years as well, as I am with most of our graduates. These guys are ready to go. They're doing a good job. It's exciting stuff, and you got to get your butt back to practice. You were there a little bit Christmas break?
Yeah.
They're a little bit this Christmas break, and we got to continue that. I love it when the guys come back. It's great to see. Coach, you have anything to wrap up with this?
Just very proud, happy that you're doing well, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Brock, you got the last words, bud.
Just thank you for everything. You guys had a big impact on my life and on many other kids' lives. So thank you, really.
Well, you had a big impact on ours, and I think that's the great thing about coaching. Like, we have impacts, but at the same time, the kids mold us into who we are. But Brock, hang on for a second. I'm going to stop recording, and we'll talk off air.